right, you big league degenerates. Welcome to the podcast. I know this is long overdue. We didn't get to finish up the Fire Conference when we were doing the preseason podcast, so didn't really get the preview of what was going on in that division. And we've missed the 2 months in podcast, so not really on track the way I'd like to be. But I'm just going to go solo here and go through a couple teams and give you guys a little bit of content this afternoon. So let's start things off in the Fire Conference with Michael and the Huron Herons. And they were the team that represented the Fire Conference in the championship last year. And they're back stronger than ever. They lost several pieces, but replaced it with maybe even better pieces. And they're off to pretty much about the same kind of start that they had last year, just completely dominating the league and the Fire Conference. If you look at their offense so far this year, team stat rankings, they're first place in a lot of the offensive categories, except for stolen bases. They're a pretty slow team, but it doesn't really matter when you slug the ball as hard as they do. And then if you look over at the pitching's been really good so far this season as well. Almost to the All-Star break, they have the best bullpen in baseball, the most strikeouts in the Fire Conference, and a pretty good defense to boot. So all around a really strong team, and I expect Michael and the Herons to be competitive again this year for a championship, even though they fell short last year. Definitely the team to beat in the Fire Conference. Looking at some of these special players on their team, of course, we have some veterans of the league that have been around for a long time, right? Like Kareem Amos, he got in a trade last year with the departing Bobby of San Antonio. I know the new GM has mentioned that he probably would not have traded Kareem Amos for such a less small return, I'll say. So Michael got a really good deal on Amos here, and he's only 28 years old. So this guy can, be a big part of the lineup moving forward for a long time to come. And in Michael's lineup if he wants him to be, and he's got him locked up for the next 3 seasons. So you should see a lot of Amos over the next few years. On top of that, he's got Omar Gonzalez, and we all know how great Gonzalez is. One time, the 2001 MVP, he's had some amazing seasons. Definitely has fallen off a little bit, right? Like he's not the guy he used to be. He's only put on pace for one more this season, and not the best personality. So, at age 37, we might be seeing the end of Omar Gonzalez. But again, I wouldn't complain if he was my first baseman. He is on an expiring contract here. So we'll see if he can continue to contribute down the stretch. What Michael's probably really excited about here is Pat Farrow, the rookie catcher right fielder. I thought he was a catcher. Rookie right fielder who's making his debut. I know he was a number 4, I was going to say top 5 prospect ranking, but he's the number 4 prospect in the TBL. And he's off to a pretty nice start so far in his rookie campaign, right? His bars aren't fully developed yet. He's got a ways to go to be reaching his full potential. But off to a pretty good start to his young career here at only 23 years of age. So that's been really great. I mean, what's he at? 18 home runs already, 65 games in. So the rookie's on pace for 45 home runs. So that's pretty phenomenal. And then again, Phil Crawhorn, another veteran who he's picked up through free agency this year. A really great pickup, in my opinion, and Crawhorn's having another nice season at the age of 40. So what an impressive, just career that Phil Crawford's had here, coming in as an old guy into our league. And it doesn't stop there. I mean, Victor Rivera is the number 1 shortstop in the league, I'm pretty sure. Just on pace for a monster season again. Defensively, this guy can play. Offensively, this guy can play. Already at 21 home runs. He's on pace for 52 home runs, which is just absurd. Obviously, we've talked about the offensive boost that's happening this year because of the change to the settings. But still, I think to have a defensive shortstop that's going to put up 50 home runs is such a unicorn. And this team's going to continue to be good as long as Victor Rivera's on it. So, and just looking up and down this lineup, we're 65 games in. He's got 3 more guys here in double digits with home runs already. Alberto, 30 years old, second base. Ricky Rodriguez. We're just talking about the offense on this team. So they are absolutely stacked. If you go over to the bullpen, They got Brett Johnson, the 26-year-old, as their ace right now. Had a great season last year and is pitching pretty well this year, considering, again, the change in dynamics for offense and pitching in our league here. Not super impressed with this guy, right? He doesn't have amazing pitches, but he's got 5 pitches and he's got good stuff. So a quality starter, but definitely not a number one in my book, even though he's listed in the one spot in the rotation. He picked up Learfield as well. I believe this was a free agent signing this year. Yep. So this was an early free agent signing. So that was another um, starting pitcher just to add depth here. And going up and down the lineup, 26-year-old Mark Morales and a lefty, 26-year-old Brian Ole, Alfredo Cruz. I mean, all these guys are really good. And then with the best bullpen in baseball here, he got Dykstra here in a trade with Louisville last year, and he continues to be a really good relief pitcher. He's got the two Dykstras. I actually love that. We're going to call them the Dykstra brothers because they're both 30 years old. If their birthdays aren't the same, they should be June 2nd, 1976. And oh, where's John? November 22nd. We're gonna have to fix that because we're gonna have to make them brothers. But anyways, yeah, Huron clearly the team to beat here in the Topaz division and probably in the entire conference as well. So let's take a look at their system real quick to see what they got left, if anything's coming up. They do have the number 8 prospect in baseball and Jason Anthony. I thought Jason Anthony was such a steal when he got Anthony in the draft. If you remember, Jason Anthony was actually passed on by Nashville, Cody. Didn't sign him. He was a first round pick then, I think 12th overall, and then he went second overall in 2005. So probably some great potential there in terms of starting pitching, but his system has been depleted a little bit. As we know, Huron had the best system in baseball for years, and finally some of those pieces are coming through to fruition. So, yeah, Huron's arrived. He's going to be competitive for a long time, I think. And Michael's been super active as a GM in terms of making deals and really shaping this team. So let's see if he can get over the hump this year and win that championship. Brings us on to our next team, and I spent a lot of time there on the Herons, but rightfully so because they're so good. But our next team is also no one to slouch or shrug at, and that is Jacob and the Kingston Frontenacs. Kingston won 100 games last year, I do believe, 98 games, so they came close. But still, he's been consistent. He's been in the playoffs every season except for 2002. He made a ton of huge moves, not last offseason, but 2 off seasons ago to try to be competitive for a championship last year, and that didn't work out. One, because Huron just came out of nowhere and became a dominant team. And two, just, he gets to the playoff and Jacob got swept again. So definitely a disappointing ending to what was a pretty good season last year. Looking at this year, he's off to a good start again. He's already 7 games back of the Herons, who are off to a torrid pace, but 38 and 27 is nothing to slouch at, and it's good for the second best record in the Fire Conference right now. As we look at the Topaz division again, being more competitive this year than the Ruby division. So looking at Jacob's team, obviously he's got Ricardo Box, who's one of my favorite players. And now that the offensive numbers have been fixed, a guy with 80 contact, 80 gap, 75 avoid K, yeah, he should be hitting like 350, I think, not 293. So Box is having a really, really great year. He's only 36, so I mean, he's getting up there in age, but he's got a few seasons left. He hasn't shown any signs of regression yet. So that's pretty exciting. And looking at the contract, yeah, he's player option for next year. We'll see if Jacob's able to retain him for one more year after this. Joe Smith, I'm not familiar with that name. Looks like a 23-year-old rookie playing in the 2 spot for Kingston. He's having a decent start to his season already. 1.5 WAR. And liking these numbers, again, contact gap and avoid Ks. I know Jacob really highly values these 3 numbers. You'll see that a lot in the profiles of his batters. And this guy can play the field as well, right? He's got a great outfield range and he's a speedster. So once he fully develops, this could be a pretty dangerous player in the league. So nice find here for Jacob, a 2nd-round pick in 2002. Continuing on, we got the heart of the lineup with Rich Gordon, obviously coming over in the trade. If he can stay healthy, he is a threat to be reckoned with, and he's been healthy, pretty healthy the last few years. Let's hope to avoid injury this year. He is up to the age of 30, so he actually, he's bounced around a lot. I want to say not just the 2 teams, but traded before the age of 30, so traded in his prime. And he's definitely really, really good still. On pace for 7 WAR. Future Hall of Famer, I would dare to say, right? At least if he keeps up this pace for a couple more seasons. Um, and then continuing on, Dennis Lemke, another really nice piece. 2001, number 3 overall pick, the third pick overall. So he's come through and he's played for a couple seasons now, and he's just been nothing but solid 5 WAR player every single year that he's played. I'm trying to figure out what happened here. Did he draft him in 2001 and he played right away in 2002? That was like an instant call up, which would make sense. Our league was super shallow, but Lemke's already up to 25 career WAR and he's only 28 years old. So um, nice career so far and hitting in the 3 spot for Kingston, fourth, the cleanup spot. And then, of course, the pride and joy of the Kingston Frontenacs. I know Jacob's very proud of this draft pick, getting him 5th overall in 2003, is Zach Coster. And Zach is, just quite the phenom. He's got a 2.6 WAR hitting. He's hitting 348 right now with 19 home runs. And then if you go over to the pitcher side, he's got an ERA of 3, which is probably lower than anybody on the Oahu Paddlers. So he's got a true 2-star phenom here in Zach Coster. And I actually do like him way better as a pitcher than I do as a hitter. It's crazy. I mean, he's great in both. Look at this. He's an 80-80 both. That's fucking sexy. Or maybe potential doesn't change. I don't know. But either way, like he's completely proven Jacob right. He's been a complete stud. He's 25 years old and just an exciting piece to have. I wonder how much he's going to cost once he's through arbitration being a two-way star, but don't worry about that yet, right? And then the rest of the lineup feels like it's a little more fill in than the Herons lineup, than Michael's lineup. Kimbrough's not a bad piece. But the rest of these pieces here, they really are a little more incomplete in terms of 1 through 9. Don't tell that to the offense because outside of the Herons, it looks like Kingston does have the number 2 offense in the Fire Conference for the most part. And they've got a great pitching staff. They're top 2 in most categories. They've got the best defense in the league. So this team is a serious threat um, in terms of contender in the Fire Conference. And what I love about the clash between the Herons and the Frontenacs, if you look, Jacob leads the league in stolen bases. I'm pretty sure Michael and the Herons are in last place with 10 stolen bases. So completely different builds for these two offenses. Looking at the pitching, Oscar Mina is obviously not pitching up to expectations so far. I know, again, the pitching numbers have gone up, but 5.17 ERA is definitely a bit high, right? And he's injured, which kind of sucks. Favia, we got Lehman. So Lehman's pretty young. It looks like 26. Coaster, who we've talked about being a complete stud. Pitching the 4 spot, probably because he also hits, makes sense. But the pitching, pretty average here, but definitely pitching, above average, second in the Fire Conference. And then looking at the bullpen's really nice as well. So has been really performing well. I think I expect Kingston to compete again this year. They have a lot of competition behind them. Indy, Louisville, Virginia. It wouldn't shock me if Kingston somehow missed the postseason, but I don't expect that to happen. I think that they're going to be right there at the end. I don't think they're going to catch Michael. I think Michael has a really dominant club right now, but I think Kingston's going to be the 2 seed out of this division or a wild card at the very least. But we'll see how this continues to play out as we keep going here. Going on to let's take a look at Kingston's system real quick, and then we'll go on to the next team. Yeah, Kingston's got a pretty barren system. He's traded a lot of pieces, traded a lot of draft picks to try to improve and hit his window now. I think that's one of the most painful things about the fact that he has been swept now multiple times out of the postseason. He's really committed to making a deep run and making a team that's going to win a championship. So each time he suffers a setback like that, especially in that fashion, it's just got to sting. So if he can't pull through the next few seasons, we'll have to see what direction his club goes in as these teams around him continue to get younger and younger. As we looked at his team, he does have some nice young pieces that you can still build a core around. So yeah, we'll see what the future holds. Moving on to the next team, and honestly, I don't remember who finished in 3rd and 4th last year between Louisville and Virginia. So I'm going to guess Louisville. Let's see, 90 wins. We'll go back. We'll check Virginia real quick. 92 wins. So Virginia. So we will look at Andrew's team. The Virginia Rebels, they've been, Andrew's done good things since he joined the league. I think he joined right before the 2004 season, so he's made the playoffs twice now, in his two seasons. And he's got another, much like most of the Topaz division, they're the dominant conference, excuse me, dominant division in the conference. He's got a really good offense. If you look here, he's fourth in run scored, fourth in average, first on base percentage, third in these other categories, pretty much behind the two teams in front of him in the division. And then the pitching has really struggled this year, more towards, and again, this is out of 14 teams in each conference, so right middle of the pack in terms of runs against, some of these other categories, and a little below average in terms of defense, which might be impacting the pitching as well. Um, Virginia and Andrew's team, I don't want to discount them because they've, again, been there back-to-back seasons. They're just up against really stiff competition in terms of those two teams in front of them. But they continue to win at 34 and 31 right now. They could easily sneak into the postseason. Right now, they are a wild card team if the season were to end today. And just kind of looking up and down their lineup, Dave Castillo's up to 17 home runs already as switch hitter. He's having a nice little season, and he's been great for Virginia. I mean, he put up almost 8 WAR last year, and this guy's not even on my radar. So, 27-year-old first baseman. If you don't know his name now, you should know it after this podcast. Dave Castillo with just a fantastic season last year. He's actually led the league in walks back-to-back years. He led the league in runs last year, on base percentage. So a great season for him last year. And then looking here, Nick Guzman, a lefty, hitting cleanup. I don't love Nick Guzman. 1.5 WAR. He's having a pretty nice season so far in 60 games. Doesn't look like he can play the outfield very well. 45 range. It's pretty bad, but he's actually put up a positive zone rating in right field this year. So he's played pretty well. Alt Philish. And I actually do like this guy, even though, again, he can't play the outfield. This is crazy. 1.2 WAR so far this season. He's hitting 300, so he's just really mashing the ball. But let's see those fielding stats. Yeah, he's slightly below average there in left field in 20 games, so that could be a real liability. Seems more like a DH. Oh, he's playing DH, so there you go. So Andrew knows what he's doing. And then we have a decent offensive center fielder. Definitely can't play the outfield. It looks like he did put up 4.5 WAR last year for Virginia. But yeah, he's -4 zone rating already in 60 games. So real defensive liability out there. It kind of goes to show why they have one of the lower ranked defenses here. Let's take a look at their shortstop. Ryan Bonner, so he's a good defensive shortstop, but on the opposite end of the spectrum, terrible offensive bars he can't really hit. Um, and just been kind of average in the field this year. So yeah, I think again they have the fourth ranked offense in the Fire Conference. So they're doing good things right now. None of these bats really scare me like the previous two teams we've looked at. Tim Cree, I actually really like this guy as well. Take a look at him. Hasn't put up amazing numbers in his career yet, but yeah, I don't know, something about his profile. Just a fan. 25 years old. He's young. Looking at the pitching for the Rebels, they got a pretty good bullpen, it looks like. What's their bullpen ERA? Fourth in the league? Yeah, I mean, their bullpen's not terrible. 17 saves by the closer already this year, 2 blown saves. So he's been pretty reliable there at the back end. De La Rosa is 30 years old. Rest of his bullpen's been kind of mid, right? And they look like kind of mid ratings wise. He's had some highlights, he's had some struggles. I feel like there's no one that really stands out in his starting rotation. Brian Romo doesn't look terrible. He's pitching pretty well. It's not fully developed yet. He's got a lot of pitches. This is his third season pitching for Virginia, so even though he's not fully developed, fourth season, excuse me, he's been consistent. So Brian Romo, consistent pitcher here in the league. The rest of these guys, pretty bad, right? Like bad pitching staff here. And I know because I have one too. So don't know if this is going to hold back Virginia from, ambitions of having a deep run if they make the postseason. Obviously, you can shorten up the rotation if you get to the postseason, so you can cut off one of those guys, but he might be looking to make a move if he's close towards the deadline. Looking at Virginia's system, I would say they have the healthiest system left of these teams that we've looked at so far in the Topaz. A lot of top 100 prospects and good-looking prospects. Nobody's really close. These are all really young guys, so they could always dev down. They could meet their fail to meet their potential. You never know what's going to happen. Looks like Al Sanchez is kind of close, and he looks really sexy. Kind of a douchebag, bad work ethic, but yeah, OSA likes him, and he's starting to develop, so that's a positive sign for the Rebels. A lot of hitters, no pitching really. That's not true. Angel has studio, but he's young. So yeah, Virginia's kind of in a middle place. They are a playoff contender, I think, this year. They have some future pieces, but it's just such a hard call to make when you have some really dominant teams in front of you. You're going to have to not just make it to the postseason, but then get a little lucky, have a hot streak and try to knock off one of these better teams. But if there's one thing we've learned about the Fire Conference over the last couple seasons, it's that the favorites don't like to win games. It seems like the underdogs have had a lot of success in the postseason. So get in and anything can happen. Virginia is only 2 seasons removed from a conference championship. So we will see or from, excuse me, being in a conference championship game. So we'll see how their season plays out. That brings us to our next team here, and that is the Louisville Rivermen. And we actually have a new GM taking over this team this season. Um, as Louisville was run by Mac last season, Mac in his first season brought them to the playoffs and actually won a playoff series, I believe, against somebody. Um, Sorry about that. So looking at Chuck's team, Chuck has now taken over. Fellow Vermonter, welcome to the league, Chuck. Happy to have you. And Chuck's team so far, kind of a kind of an interesting statistical uh, results. Third in runs scored, but if you look at their team, they're 12th in batting average. I guess they hit a lot of home runs, right? Tied for fourth in home runs. So have trouble getting on base, have trouble hitting unless they're hitting it over the wall. So and then looking at the pitching side too, definitely bottom half. Starters ERA 11th, bullpens ERA 10th. This is out of 14 teams. The defense is okay. So this team's kind of all over the place. But right now, Louisville, after making the postseason last year, again at 34 and 31, so having an okay start to their season and sitting in that second wild card spot tied with Virginia. So um, we'll see how their season continues to go. Obviously, we've got the Korean Kong here, Park. If anybody remembers, he was a big international free agent signing a couple years ago, and he's been the real deal since joining the league. He was actually signed by two Louisville GMs ago by Miles, for a pretty big contract, if I remember. Yeah, 35 million a year. But he's actually been pretty close to being worth it, He put up 5 WAR 2 seasons ago, 7 WAR last season. He's on pace for 5 WAR again. And he's just been really, really good. He's only 25 years old, and he seems like a veteran in the league. He's also got Juan Santiago hitting fourth here. And Santiago is a rookie this year. So um, just to bring it up to Steve here, this was actually a 74th round pick in the inaugural draft, Steve. So apparently there are some gems a little later on in these drafts. Obviously, this isn't what Steve's talking about, and I'm just joking, but a 74th round pick, that's pretty crazy that this got TCR'd up, and he's now a valuable player here in the league. So he's sitting cleanup right now. I'm not sure how much I like him. He's can't play defense. He's definitely first base, DH type. But yeah, he's hit 17 home runs. So that's great for Chuck so far. Chuck's lineup is very heavy with the lefties. Well, I guess it's 50-50. He's got 4 lefties and 5 righties. So good diversity. And I don't really love anybody else in this lineup. Jesse Davies is a familiar name. pretty good outfield range. So yeah, I like Davies. He's a pretty quality major leaguer, although he is well, he's only 28. Okay, so yeah, he's got some time left. But I feel like Park is really the highlight of this lineup. Let's take a look at Judah Walker here. It looks like Judah Walker was the third overall pick in 2003, and he is already up to the major leagues here in 2006. Um, I don't know. He could be a decent guy. He is selfish, which is too bad, but he's going to strike out a ton. But he's a pretty good catcher in terms of catcher ability, catcher arm. Victor Nieto. Louisville's just got a lot of young guys. I mean, no real superstars down here, though. These are all like kind of fringe players, in my opinion. So, um, we'll see if they can continue to score runs at the clip that they are. 11 home runs from the leadoff guy. Oh, Danny Mashburn. We almost missed him. 70 potential. Again, I don't love his bars. I mean, it looks like this guy's going to mash some home runs. He's got a good eye. I'm not sure why Chuck's having him hit in the leadoff spot because he's not very fast. Doesn't seem like he gets on base at a very good clip. So kind of question that move. But um, yeah, if they can continue to mash home runs, they might be able to stay around 500 and sneak into the playoffs. Looking at their pitching, pretty below average, I would say. Maybe a bit unlucky so far to start the season as well. And their defense has been pretty average also. Jordan Adame, definitely a great name here in the league. A trade with Las Vegas a couple seasons ago. Off to a good start to his season. The ERAs, again, inflated, but we have to kind of wait to see how ERAs shake out and where the new medium is going to be. But as you remember, Jordan Adame, 2002 Pitcher of the Year. So a nice piece to have here for Chuck. Lane Hazeltine, another really nice piece. Who's I feel like suffered from injury history. So the second overall pick, yeah, look at that 6 month injury, 5 to 6 month injury. Let's hope this is the year he stays healthy because he hasn't pitched a full season, really since he's made the major leagues. When he does, he pitches well. So if Hazelton can stay healthy, that might have a big impact for Chuck's team. And then, of course, I feel like this team has really suffered from injuries as well. Let's take a look. Yeah, Eric Pierce. Eric Pierce is another sexy young pitcher who knows if he's going to be able to stay healthy. 4 month injury, he's on another multiple month injury now. So just a bunch of like just injury prone pitchers. And I feel for Chuck on this one. Look at this. Like this guy put up 4 WAR back-to-back seasons. So what a hurt to lose this guy. Um, but I feel for Chuck because I have a lot of pitchers, young pitchers as well, who just can't stay healthy. Looking at the rest of this pitching staff, like again, just pretty average. He's got some lefties in here, which I like. I think it's, nice to sprinkle in some left-handed pitchers in your lineup. A lot of lefties pitching the bullpen as well. And his bullpen's pitched okay. His closer doesn't look like he's done that great so far this year. 21 games, 6 saves. May not have been the closer all year long. I'm not sure. But yeah, pretty average bullpen. Nothing to really write home about, right? So take a quick look at his system. And yeah, pretty average system as well. This is a pretty average team all around. He does have the number 5 prospect in the league, and I don't think I've looked at this guy. Pete Robinson, picked 5th overall last year by Max. So that's a little gift to our incoming GM, Chuck. Maybe a future piece right here. I do like his bars. Kind of interesting with the error, but he could play corner outfield pretty well, I think. And if the guy's gonna mash home runs, I like it. So. And he's got some other pieces, right? As does everybody. So some pieces that are close might be future guys in the league here soon. So reinforcements may be on the way. Again, I think Louisville seems like they're a step behind Kingston and Huron. But yeah, at 500 and with some decent pieces, if they can avoid further serious injuries, I think they can be competitive right up to the end as well. So it's going to bring us to our 5th team here in the Topaz division. And See here. Fifth team is going to be Bob and the Indianapolis Predators. And I want to say this is Bob's second season, but I might be making that up. This might be his first season. No, it's his second season. I'm almost positive. Bob, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But I think this is his second season. I think he just missed the playoffs last year. Um, and this is another team. He definitely inherited a pretty tough situation because Indy wasn't a winner right away. They definitely just didn't win. And I think they were trying to. And then some of the young pieces didn't work out, and there wasn't a lot to build on when he got here. So just barely missed the playoffs last year with a kind of tough September, I believe. And off to a good start this year as they are pacing as the number two seed. Looking at their lineup right now, they really struggle offensively. You know, middle of the pack towards bottom half of the pack in a lot of offensive categories. If you look at the pitching, though, that's kind of what the story's been for Indy so far this year. Bob's pitching staff has performed really well, second in runs against, third in starters ERA. So, and looking at the defense, he may have the best defensive team or one of the top defensive teams in the entire league. Second in efficiency, second in zone rating, first in errors here in the Fire Conference. So let's take a look at his team real quick. Corey Goodman in the 3 spot and DHing, 16 home runs. Having a career year so far. Well, I guess not. Well, yeah, he put up 8 WAR as a minor leaguer in A. That's pretty crazy. Um, but I guess I can't say he's having a career year because he's a rookie. So a rookie having a nice year on pace for 5.5 WAR. Corey Goodman here, and he was actually a trade with Louisville in the offseason. Let's take a look if we can find it. Here it is. Must have been a trade for some picks because I don't see anything else included here. So, or this might have been the trade I fucked up. I fucked one of these trades up. Yeah, I think it is. Was it for Brandon Geary? I think it was. So yeah, Louisville got a future asset, who we're just looking at, actually. I was just looking at that picture. And Indy got a right now bat in Corey Goodman, who's 25-year-old DH, left-hander. And so far, holding down the middle of that lineup, Zerwal Jeka. I like the name. And he's a really great fielder, looks like. Not the best offensive bars, but nice little player here. And again, Bob's really focused on defense, so that kind of fits the profile right there. Already 11 home runs from this guy, too. If you can get a guy that's like an elite defender and he hits bombs, I mean, that's a good combo. The rest of the lineup is pretty shallow. Looks like a lot of fillers. Guys hitting not great so far, not a lot of power from the 6 through 9 hitters. Um, Lucero's not doing terrible, but I think he's hitting well above his bars right now. Another elite defender, though. So if you are getting a theme from how Bob builds his teams, defense first. Looks like Tommy Jones has been a liability in 60 games, minus -0.8 WAR. So might need to address that if you're Bob. Let's look at the starting pitching here. This has been dominant. Daniel Jennings. Who is Daniel Jennings? 24 years old, and this is his third season, and I don't know who the hell this guy is. If we scout him, he's been pretty fantastic, but he's devved up since he was drafted. And he was taken second round, so the 44th overall pick, and he looks like an absolute stud here for Indy. In 2003, I think this was before Bob's time, so gifted a nice pick there. John Floor, he's been really solid ever since he's been in the league. And he was drafted 2001, second overall pick. Just been a really solid starting pitcher. So I can understand why Bob's in the running right now. Of all the teams we've looked at, actually maybe like his pitching staff the most. He did just trade for Bobby Bonilla. That was an interesting trade. Someone made the joke he's going to be paying him till 2060. Yeah, traded with Philly. So he needed to shore up his bullpen. His bullpen's been good, so it's hard to say that was a bad move. Well, his bullpen's been average, so probably looking for more out of Bonilla than he's gotten so far. Sergio Lucero's got 10 saves. Might be the closer now. Looks like all the recent saves have gone to Lucero. I'm always confused. Someone's got to fill me in. What's up with the two closer strategy? I see a lot of people running this. If you're listening to the podcast and you have ideas about two closer strategy, make a comment in general today. Um, yeah, so Bob, congratulations. You built a pretty nice team here, I think, and it's different from some of the ways the other teams have been built here in your division. So that's kind of cool. In terms of looking at the prospect pipeline for Indy, Miguel Martel, the best prospect here, looks like Bill Harwood. None of these guys are really that close. Well, we got a guy in AAA here. Doesn't look fantastic. Ben Curl. So maybe some serviceable pieces coming up, but not a super deep system here for Indy. Um, they're definitely kind of in there trying to compete window, but they're another mid team. They don't have like a real serious direction in either way. And what I mean by that is they're not a dominant team like Kingston or Huron might be, and they're not in a rebuild mode. They're competitive, but they're not like a top dog or easy fodder, so to say. So, but yeah, I would say between Virginia, Louisville, and Indy, it's going to be a dogfight down the stretch, and two of these three teams are likely to be there in the end. But we'll see what the Ruby division has to say about that after a weak season last year. Maybe we have a team that's also competing for that wild card. That brings us to the sixth team here in the Topaz division, and that is George and the St. Louis Storm. Steam, excuse me, St. Louis Steam. So George, one of the quieter GMs here in the league, also one of the most consistent. I don't think he's missed an export since the league began, and he is an original GM. So he's one of, I want to say, four GMs with perfect export rate. Don't quote me on that. But several people haven't missed one, and George is one of them. He is super quiet though and super passive. I don't think he's ever made a trade in the league, and I know he likes to build his team and kind of just stick with it. But he may need to start getting a little more creative, or he's going to start falling behind here. His team is under 500 and took a dip for the first time last year, no, 2 seasons now. He's been right around 500. He actually just missed the postseason in 2004 with an 84 win season, so that was tough luck. And then 78 wins last year, but might be going in the wrong direction at this point. He does have a superstar in Frank Danzig. He was the 1-1 overall in the inaugural draft. Um, and the guy's locked up 34 million this year and then a player option 34 million next year. If I was George and I'm not competitive down the stretch, I would consider flipping Frank Danzig for a frickin' boatload. He's not willing to waive his no trade clause, so I guess that's not going to happen. Outside of that, what do we have in this team? Let's see. They're pretty average offensively, maybe below average even. Yeah, I would say below average. And they're pretty below average in terms of pitching as well. The bullpen especially has really, really struggled. And the defense isn't helping, right? Defense is below average. So all around, this team's really been below average through 2 months of the season, 2.5 months of the season. Carlos Castro in the leadoff spot, I do like him. He's super speedy. He's got decent defensive ratings. Um, I remember this guy getting picked, and I thought he was going to be an absolute stud in this league. And this is his first full season. So we're going to see how his career plays out here. He hasn't been injured, so he's healthy. That's a really great thing. I like his bars a lot. He has a long ways to go to develop in terms of I and avoid K. So I'm a bit nervous that he's already making his major league debut with so much development still to go. But I mean, I guess his overall rating's there. So it's hard to say that's the wrong choice. He's a fan favorite already at 23 years old as well, about to be 24 in 4 days. But Carlos Castro, a really, really nice piece. And if you remember, infamously, George had the 1-1 in the inaugural draft, and then he won the 1-1 also in the first year player draft. And these were both random draws. So this is the result of that 1-1 pick. And um, excited to see how his career plays out. Matt Brooks hitting 300 so far. Danzig, as we talked about. But yeah, definitely some lacking in this lineup. I mean, Craig Siemens here, his bars aren't terrible, right? But he doesn't hit for power. So when your DH can't hit home runs, that's got to be pretty tough to have a 2 home run guy sitting in your 4 spot. I'm not sure that's going to help your offense. So I would consider maybe shuffling this around a little bit. Alex Paulin, not great bars, but if the guy can hit home runs, maybe shift him up a little bit and shuffle things around. But again, 2 guys with double-digit home runs. No one else really has any pop in the bat outside of that. Looking at the pitching staff here, Jesse Wilkes, he looks like he could be an okay pitcher here, maybe like a mid-rotation guy um, for a good team. Corey Kimball, this guy's probably got the most potential, right? Wow, look at that, 6 nice pitches. And he is also in his rookie year. He's actually off to a really great start. So great job here with Corey Kimball. He's got a long ways to develop, though. This is another thing that makes me nervous. Like, I guess he's ready, right? Because he's at 45. That's usually when I like to pull a guy up. But and he's pitching pretty nice. So we'll see what Corey Kimball turns into as he continues to develop. Maybe a future ace here for the St. Louis team. And then a bunch of other, just journeyman kind of like young guys who are developing, but more fillers, 3, 4, 5 spot. Looking at his closer, Benavidez has 13 saves on the year, but his ERA is 5.7. Definitely not the best. He had his game log here. He hasn't blown any saves yet this year, though, so I guess he's getting the job done. Just giving up a run here or there while he's doing it. So he did lead the league in saves back in 2002, and he probably is one of the top save guys in the league. 184 saves. I feel like is quite a bit for how long our leagues existed. So, but yeah, I want to say his bullpen's really underperforming right now. His bullpen's 11th in ERA, which is 11 out of 14. He's got some decent pieces here at the back end. They just have struggled a little bit. So yeah, my opinion, it's been kind of the same opinion I've had on the podcast, but George is going to have to get a little more creative with his team if he wants to become a perennial contender. I think just sitting back and relying on your draft picks, relying on your system, it's only going to get you so far. You might get up to a competitive point, but to get over that edge and win a championship, I feel like you got to make some kind of move. So we'll see what he does with his team moving forward. He's 7 games under 500. If he's going to turn into rebuild mode, if he's going to try to add something to spark a fire here, or if he's just going to play it out as it is and see where things go. And again, this is a good time. I just want to remind folks, our league, you don't get any compensation if a guy walks in free agency. So if you don't think you're going to re-sign a guy, try to trade him because you're not going to get anything for him at the end of the year if he walks. So looking at George's system, he's got a couple guys in the top 500 and a couple prospects that look like they could turn into something someday, right? But again, young guys, 20 overall, no development started yet. So no guarantee that they're going to be anything at all. So don't hate his system. It's pretty mid, kind of like I would say similar to Indy's system. So yeah, I think George has some decisions to make here about the future of his franchise here pretty soon. Looking up at a lot of really, really strong teams, not a hugely strong farm, not a fantastic ball club. So he's really gonna have to determine as a GM, what's the best move for him to really get the steam back on track, I think. So. And that is going to bring us to our last team here in the Topaz division, and that is the Nashville Blues, Cody's team. Cody, another original GM who had some playoff success early. I think he made it in 2002. But since then, his team has really struggled, and that really culminated the last 2 years with 200 lost teams. He lost 104 in 2004, 103 2003. And he's really just struggled here to get a competitive team on the field. Looking at his team this year, right back there in last place again, not a terrible team, a 430 win percentage, so much better than the previous teams he's had. So he's showing improvement. But I would still say that this team is pretty far away from competing, given the state of the Topaz division. Looking here real quick at his team, he does have some highlighted pieces, right? Scott Christia, I think he re-signed because he couldn't trade him because of a no-trade clause. But it looks like Christia is now willing to be traded to several different destinations. So if you are in the market for a pretty good first baseman, although he has dev'd down quite a bit, I know Christia, I think, is on the market. He did win an MVP back in 2002, so a nice career for him, but might be starting to wind in an opposite direction at this point. John Bartlett, probably the stud of Cody's team at the moment. Bartlett was the 7th overall pick in 2001 in the first-year player draft, and he's now in his 3rd season. Looking at the first two seasons, he really struggled to gain traction as a player here in the league. He led the league in strikeouts last year, 179 strikeouts, and you do see he does that have that 30 avoid K. So he's really a big liability in that sense. But he also walks a lot, right? He had 76 walks last year, but that's going to improve now that he's starting to mature. I think he's up to 1.7 WAR this year, which he's on pace for 4.2. So he's on pace to have his best season yet. And he's on pace for over 100 in walks. That could be close to a league leader. So if he can hit 60 home runs, which he's on pace to do, walk 100 times, I think he's, a nice piece to have in your lineup, even if he does strike out a whole bunch. If we continue to look at his team here too, most of his guys are pretty young, like Jay Grove here, who's having a nice season, 11 homers, 34 RBIs already. He's in his second season after playing a half season last year. Dude put up 3.2 WAR last year in 70 games. So um, definitely not pacing that well this year, but um, again, he's playing pretty well. He has another, I mean, this is another guy with a huge gap in his bars though, right? Like 30 discipline. That's tough. Dude never walks. Um, Continuing on here. Pavic hitting 300, 33 years old, so he's kind of winding down his career as well, getting towards the back end. And then a bunch of fillers, and it looks like his sixth spot isn't filled at the moment, so maybe some lineup duty needed here. I'm not sure who that would be, but nobody good. So, so yeah, Nashville's team is in trouble. That's the lineup. Let's look at the pitching staff. Again, not great. Bottom half of the league in a lot of different categories. Um, And when your ace is, man, when you got Sal Guzman in your lineup, I cut this guy because he wasn't cutting it, and he's actually pitching pretty good, all things considered, for Cody. Nice to see he found a home. Thank you, Cody. But yeah, he's got a bunch of journeymen in his starting pitching rotation. His closer is one save, so just brought this guy up. Actually, like this guy. I wonder if he was injured. He must have been injured. Yep, coming off a 10-month rotator cuff injury. So Dave Sheets, the closer here, not bad. And he's going to replace Chris Porter, who was doing an okay job in the closer role until recently. Just had an implosion the last three outings, but was really pitching well up until that. So rest of his bullpen looks terrible. And this team looks terrible. And I don't think Cody will be insulted by me saying that. I think he knows he has some work to do to get back into contention. He does ask me a lot of questions. I've mentioned Cody's one of the more active GMs in terms of DMing me and asking me clarifying questions. I think he's a newer GM to online leagues, and he's done a pretty good job. He always follows through and he exports. So hopefully he can turn things around. He does have the best system here of all the Topaz teams. Look at this. He's got 8 guys in the top 100. So if he can, if he's got money in his scouting and development budget, preferably his development budget, and he's working to develop these guys, he could be a competitive team again here in a couple seasons. But I do think he's a couple seasons away, right? I don't think he's going to be competing this year or next year or the year after that. Seth Thomas might be the closest thing to being ready. So yeah. Yeah, so that breaks down the Topaz division, and I did give it a little longer breakdown here since we did miss the preseason podcast. If I had to give my predictions here, I'm not going to be very brave. I think Huron's going to maintain number one. I think Kingston will sit in the number two spot when all is said and done. And then I do like Indy number three. I think Louisville number four, and Virginia number five are pretty interchangeable. But I'm going to give the nod to Louisville this year in making the playoffs. And then I have St. Louis's number six and Nashville's number seven. So being a coward, I'm going to take it exactly as it is 65 games in and say nothing is going to change. Maybe some fluctuating up and down, but when we're all said and done, this is going to be the standings for the Topaz division. So that is going to wrap things up for this podcast. Going to hopefully continue on with the Ruby division a little later, and then do just a breakdown of what's happened so far in the Ice Conference, what surprised us, what hasn't. And yeah, so thank you so much for joining the Topaz Division podcast, and have a wonderful sim tonight.